What up, and welcome back. Today I've got 5 things that I think everybody should know on the community side and the policing side. And I think these 5 things, if better understood by both, would not only help each other, but it would make their interactions all around go a little smoother, okay? So the first thing is, don't judge a book by its cover. We've all heard this since we were little kids. We've all been told, don't look at something and assume something. Unfortunately, we tend to judge things with our eyes before we do anything else, right? So everybody isn't highly trained. Everybody isn't highly educated. We all come from various backgrounds, and I think that's very important for us to immediately understand, not only about everybody else, but ourselves. Understand where you come from and how you believe something or how you think of something, and understand that someone may not think the same way that you do or believe in the same things that you do. Okay? So let's take a look at this video real quick.
My name is Niall Wilson, and I'm 26 years young. I'm an ex-artistic gymnast. By the age of 20, I became an Olympic and world medalist, multiple European and Commonwealth champion. I was also responsible for one of the UK's fastest growing YouTube channels, which reached 1.5 million subscribers and 350 million views worldwide. Off the back of my platform, I also managed to build a handful of multi-six-figure businesses, typically in a sport where there is zero commercial opportunity. Not to mention I'm devilishly good looking, super intelligent, and just an all-around top lad from Yorkshire. Sorry, I actually just want to restart that. I missed a couple of important things out. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Niall Wilson. I suffer badly from depression. I broke my neck doing the sport that I love. I'm self-destructive. Competing at the highest level of sport, I spent 4 to 5 nights a week in the casino alone. Once I drink alcohol, I struggle to stop for days, even weeks at a time. I've been unfaithful to previous girlfriends. I smoke cigarettes. I struggle to eat and sleep. I'm currently serving a 12-month driving ban. And I often feel lost in life after retirement. You didn't see that one coming, did you?
All right. So I'm sure we all know someone in a similar situation, or we've heard of someone in a similar situation. The reason I think this video is important is because here you have somebody who appears for all purposes to be very successful. But what a lot of people may not see or understand is that person is struggling. So why I think that's important on both sides is police officers struggle. Police officers have stresses. They go through things. They try to compartmentalize. They try to deal with things in their own personal life as well as things they've come across at work. And on the community side, you don't know what's going through somebody's mind, what they've been through. So just because you come across someone and you assume that they're a certain lifestyle or you assume that they should know certain things, that may not always be the case. So I think it's very important for us to understand that we can never judge a book by its cover. Although it's very easy to do, a lot of times that can cause issues for us down the road, or it can create a relationship that maybe could have been a little better had we not automatically assumed something about somebody, right? The next thing I want to talk about is not every cop is overzealous and not every citizen hates police. And even the ones that may come off as overzealous, and even the citizens that may sometimes have negative interactions with police, or may be known to police to be negative or aggressive, that may not always be the case with every interaction. So social media has become a huge downfall for this. And I've talked about this before. A lot of people will take snippets or little clips of something without the full context and put it up there. And that creates a greater array of discontent on both sides. Think of when you first start a new job, right? I know for me, a lot of times when I start a new job, I'll be reserved. I'm kind of quiet. I'm kind of feeling everybody out. I get to know everybody. And anybody who knows me knows that I won't shut up. I'm a social butterfly. I will talk to anybody. But when I first get into an environment that I'm not familiar with, I'll kind of like recluse up. I'm kind of very reserved. And most people can be that way. As a police officer, if you encounter someone and they're reserved, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't like you. That doesn't necessarily mean that they've had a bad interaction with you. They're just keeping their cards close because they don't know who you are as a person. And the same goes for the community. The community needs to understand that a police officer may be resorting back to their training. Maybe they're not comfortable with this specific interaction, the specific call that they're on. It's not that they may be unwilling to communicate with the citizens in this environment. They may not know how. So just understand that on both sides, okay? It may not always mean that there's a negative aspect to that interaction. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is communication. And believe it or not, both sides do not know how to communicate. Everybody does not know how to effectively communicate. So let's take a look at this video and I kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about. All right, so a lot of people might watch this video and laugh, think that it's funny, but there's some really good points in this video. Clearly, this officer is dealing with individuals who don't know how to speak. Okay, they only know how to sign. It's almost like being in a foreign country. I remember the first time when I was overseas trying to interact with people from that country, and you do a lot of pointing, you do a lot of you're trying to think in your mind, how do I communicate with this person? People are used to communicating in a manner that depicts the environment they're from. Okay? Most people can't grasp that concept. Everybody thinks, okay, we're in America, you should know how to talk to people. And that's not the case, okay? I take you back to the last video when I was talking about the gentleman who was trying to get me to change the channel on the TV, and he had never been taught how to legitimately ask a question. And if he had, he wasn't using that. He was thinking about what he knows. Most people will communicate the way they're used to communicating. They will talk the way they're used to talking. For me, it's like I'm very comfortable in an urban environment. If you put me in a very rural environment, it's not that I'm uncomfortable, but I don't know the things those people know. I'm not familiar with their lifestyle as much as I am a more urban lifestyle. And that doesn't mean that we can't have a discussion, that we can't talk. For me, it just may not be as fluid as it would be with somebody who I'm more comfortable talking to. So both sides need to understand that. A lot of times as a police officer, you have the ability to come across a wide array of individuals. Just because you work in one area doesn't mean that you're always going to deal with people from that area. So think about that the next time you conduct a stop or the next time you interact with someone from the community and you think, this person's not getting what I'm saying. They may truly not understand what you're saying. It's almost like a foreign language to them. And the same goes to the community. Understand that the cop may not be comfortable with explaining what's going on to you, not because they don't want to explain it to you, but they're trying to explain it in a manner that you're going to understand. And a lot of people don't get that. And some people may say, oh, well, that's BS, how difficult is it to understand, or how difficult is it to explain something to somebody? You would be very surprised. Education levels play a huge part in this. Social interactions with people. The amount of people who've never left their neighborhood, let alone the county or the state, is astonishing. People can't grasp that. So when we interact with each other, we've got to remember we may be speaking with someone who's not used to speaking with someone like me. Okay? So just keep that in mind the next time you have an interaction with someone. The next thing I want to talk about is stress. Both sides, the community and the police, don't always know how to interact with people in a stressful environment. They may not know how to conduct themselves in a stressful environment. And a lot of people immediately assume police officers are highly trained. They should know how to do this. That's their job. They do this every day. But that does not mean that their experience level is the same as what's taking place right then and there. You can train someone all day long in a classroom on how to deal with something, how to respond in this situation. But that doesn't mean that your fight or flight response, that your fine motor skills, that your tunnel vision isn't going to take place. I remember the first time I was on a traffic stop, had nothing to do with anything else but this traffic stop. And right around the corner, another department was calling out that they had someone running from them. And it clicked in. I'm like, oh my God, I'm right here. So I'm listening to where the suspect is running. I come around. I see the suspect jump the fence. It's coming right at me. I had my gun out. And I could not hear the officer behind them screaming for them to stop. I couldn't hear anything. I lost all hearing. And it wasn't even a serious situation, but I was brand new. For me, it was nighttime. It was it was late at night. It was very dark. The only thing I knew is where I was in that moment, but I couldn't hear anything. I wasn't scared. Couldn't even tell you, but I recognized after the fact that I lost my hearing. So I started doing a little research into auditory exclusion. Another incident that I came across was several years later, a neighboring department had a stabbing. So I show up, I pull up, the officer's at the ambulance. The officer comes over to my car and I said, hey, what do you need? Where did the suspect go? And this officer could not verbally tell me what they needed or any description of the suspect. It's my belief that officer had never encountered a stabbing, let alone a scene that they were just on. So it was hard for that officer to explain what they needed or what was going on. Cops see a lot of traumatic incidents throughout their career. The community, depending on where you're at, may encounter a lot of traumatic activity in their lifetime, and they may never encounter a traumatic event in their lifetime. So as a cop, when you roll up, you arrive on a scene and you're trying to gather information. Cops are trained to arrive, assess, secure any threat, apprehend any threat, contain them, provide medical aid, and then gather information. And a lot of that happens in a matter of seconds. So when an officer has an individual off to the side in a chaotic scene and they're trying to gather information, it can be very difficult for that individual, that citizen, to relay that information because in their mind, they're still focused on the threat. They're still, even though the threat may be contained, that's still in their mind. They're still focused on what they just witnessed, which could be traumatic, and that's all they can think about. Or maybe something traumatic happened to them. And that's the only thing they're focused on. They're closed up, Both sides, we need to take into consideration, okay, this person doesn't know how to deal with stress. And again, a lot of people may say, well, if the officer can't handle stress, they shouldn't be doing this job. I'm here to tell you, there's nothing that can train you on how to deal with stress other than being in a stressful environment and having that reoccur and kind of learning as you go. You can be put in the most stressful situations in training, and that may help a little bit, may give you something to fall back on when you encounter a similar situation in real life, but you never know how your body's going to react. So just keep that in mind. The last thing I want to talk about, and it's kind of, again, self-explanatory, but you never know who you're talking to. You never know who you're dealing with on the cops level and on the community's level. A cop is always trying or should always be trying to think about how they're speaking. But again, they're human, so they're going to resort back to what they're most comfortable with. As a citizen, if you have a negative interaction with a police officer, that doesn't mean the next police officer is going to respond the same way. It also means that the officer you just had that interaction with doesn't mean they're going to respond in a negative manner the next time they encounter you. Or don't dismiss all police officers because of one bad action, because down the road you may need legitimate assistance, and whether you like it or not, that police officer is going to come back and provide that assistance. That's what they're there for. So, I know it's kind of, all of these are self-explanatory. Some of this stuff may be new to you. But at the end of the day, I think it's highly important that we remember we're all human. We're all the same. And I think if we can take these 5 things and go back to, just the basics. Don't judge a book by its cover. Not everybody's overzealous. Everybody doesn't hate each other. And understand that everybody's not an expert in communication. Understanding stress levels, what can cause a person to have difficulty communicating. And just keep in mind that you never know who you're talking to or dealing with, and you may encounter them down the road. And it's not always going to be a negative interaction. It may not always be a positive interaction. But the likelihood of you coming into contact with that person again is very probable. So just keep that in mind. I think if we can focus on these 5 points, kind of start to reflect on them ourselves and understand how we respond in these situations or how we act in these 5 points, it can make us have better interactions and smoother interactions across the board between both groups. So I hope this is helpful. If so, please like, subscribe, comment, give me some feedback. I would love to hear from you guys. And have a great day.